morning. I hope your Friday is off to a great start. Here in Kansas, the weather has turned cold. There's actually ice on our sidewalk, so that was a little bit unexpected. Knew it would be colder today. Wasn't expecting it to be quite that cold. So today, by request, the topic that I'm going to dig into is basic budgeting. And thanks to Tony Titus for putting this one out for me. So when we talk about basic budgeting, there's a framework that I really like to utilize. It's a framework that when I'm doing premarital counseling with couples, I recommend. When I'm doing any kind of business mentoring or counseling, I always recommend this breakdown as well. And basically, in this budgeting process, you're going to learn to utilize about 70% of your income or your revenue for your day-to-day expenses, household living, those kinds of things. But the other 30% you're going to use very strategically. So let me just kind of break this down for you. So the first thing that I always recommend a person do, and you got to remember I'm a Christian, a person of faith, and so this is going to be kind of the backdrop of where this comes from. So the first 10% is a tithe. And what a tithe actually is it is a giving of your first fruits. In my case, it's giving of the first fruits to God because He's the one who's given me the harvest to begin with. And so it's a way to honor God with my income. So the first 10% of whatever comes into our household or even our business, we tithe on. Now, the idea of a tithe is actually somewhat of an agricultural term where you set apart 10% and it's set apart for, reasons of faith. It can be set apart for, other purposes. But the idea of a tithe is it's a tenth. And so 10% is tithed on. The second 10% is used for savings. And when we talk about savings is not money that's really meant to go to work for you as much as it's meant to be a safety reserve, a safety net. It's there in case of unexpected things like COVID virus and quarantines so that you have a pool of resources to work from. And typically this savings would be used for things like car repairs to the home, unexpected expenses. Now, depending on what guru you listen to, the recommended is anywhere from 3 to 6 months, some even up to a year of expenses in savings. I'm going to let you figure out what's appropriate for you, but you certainly want to have, I would say, at minimum 3 months in savings. 6 months seems like a smart idea. And, 4 weeks ago, 3 months would have seemed like, well, that's more than enough. Now that so many of us are parked at home and not generating regular revenue, 6 months seems a whole lot smarter, doesn't it? So you've got to figure out what is actually appropriate for your circumstance. But 3 to 6 months, ideally, of expenses in savings. That's money you can access very quickly. You can turn it liquid very quickly. That's why it's not necessarily money that we're going to have going to work for us, although it may be earning a little interest. And obviously with the Fed dropping rates to basically zero, you're not really going to earn anything on that money. And in fact, it's not even going to keep up with inflation. It just literally is a bucket you can pull from in an emergency if you need it. The next thing is 10% goes to investment, and this is money that goes to work. This is where we are going to send our money out the door, and we're going to have it go out and earn wages for us. And there's many places that a person can invest. Obviously, most people think about stocks and bonds and mutual funds when they talk investing, but investing can be any number of things. It can be businesses, it can be real estate, it can be commodities, it can be, buying and selling antique, vehicles. It could be any number of things, but the concept is it is your money going out to earn money for you. And there's a rule that you want to understand when it comes to your investing. It's a basic rule called the rule of 72. And what the rule of 72 is simply this: whatever rate of return you're earning, if you will divide that by 72, whatever that product ends up being is how many years it takes to double your money at that stated rate of interest, at that rate of return. So, for example, if a person is earning 9% return on their invested money, their money is going to double every 8 years. And so the larger that return is, the faster a person is able to double their money, having their money work for them. So if you're able to have a 36% return, then you're going to double your money every 2 years. If you're able to hit 72% every year, you're going to double your money every year. If you go above 72%, you're going to double your money in less than a year. So understanding that principle is important, because part of what you want to look at is, what am I trying to get that money to do for me over the long term? And so if your rate of return is too low, you're going to fall short. And so you've got to figure out what vehicles make sense for what purpose. And so that's a really basic budget. You use the remaining 70% to live on, to do all the things you normally do. Now, if you need a little more help with that, obviously what is recommended is that you break that budget even further. I'm going to use this much for meals. I'm going to use this much for healthcare. I'm going to use this much for clothing. And you begin to break it down by category. Some people need to break it down a lot further. Some people can do okay with a pretty broad, mix. The great thing is you've got software like Quicken and QuickBooks that will help you. Mint is another one that will help you figure out your budgeting. It will show you where you're spending too much, where you're over budget, where you're not really, living within your means. And so right now, where people's incomes are, in flux, a harder budget might be the more appropriate thing to do. I've got friends that what they strive to do is live on 50%, and they invest and save, 40%, tithe 10. That's a great goal for you to get to. Biggest thing you want to do, though, is get smart with money. Know where your money's going. Most people don't do a good job of tracking where they spend money. And so what ends up happening is they spend without any understanding of where they actually are financially at any given moment. So those are some things that you want to do. One last recommendation: if you're just starting out, you can use what's called the envelope system. The envelope system is something my wife and I used early on in our marriage because we were young and immature and dumb with money. And the way the envelope system worked is, when we got paid, we would put cash in envelopes. This one is for the house payment. This one is for groceries. This one's for gas in the car. This one's for, going out to eat. And so once the envelope was empty, there was no more spending in that category. So if you're really starting out or you're really struggling with this, you might even need to go to the envelope system. All right, it's also Friday freebie. So my book, Troubles of a Righteous Man, is free on Kindle today, tomorrow, and Sunday. You can pick that up at troublesbook.com, absolutely free. Download it to your phone or your Kindle, whatever you're going to read it on. Hope you enjoy that one. That one is actually the first book that I wrote. I wrote it in 2002. It's just some of my life stories of places where it looked like my goose was cooked, and God was there to see me through safely in each of those circumstances. So hopefully you'll be blessed by that. Also a reminder, if you are filing for the SBA payment protection loans, that process opens up today. Get with your SBA lender. The applications are online. I dropped mine off with my lender yesterday. This is a part of the stimulus package that is meant to keep people at work. And so If you meet the criteria, one of those criteria is keeping your people at work, the government will make that loan forgivable in most cases. And so your lender can send you out all the information on that. Yeah, so if you've got that, other topics you want to discuss, feel free to throw those in the comments. I'll have something else for you later today. Hope you have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you soon.